Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 11th of July of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, and the updates are coming from all over the combat line. There are more videos and more photo confirmation of destroyed Ukrainian armored vehicles on the Bradley Square. There are some updates from Pyatikhatki. There is some progress of the Ukrainian force on the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. There are some updates in Avdiivka and Klishchevka. There is some progress from the Ukrainian side in the vicinity of Solidar and Razdolovka, and there is a significant progress of the Russian forces on the Kubensk and Liman front lines. And this video we're going to start exactly with the Kubensk and with the Liman front lines. The Russians, as a result of counter-offensive operation, managed to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt and to capture and to enter the settlement by the name of Tarskoye. Today, somewhere at noon time, the Ukrainian sources started publishing the video how they were bombing and shelling some forest, and there was a note to this video saying that Ukrainians are trying to slow down and to bomb the Russian positions in the eastern part of Tarskoye. So basically this video is geolocated, and basically this video confirms that the Russians, as a result of attack, managed to enter the settlement, and basically the Russians managed to cut the Ukrainians' bridgehead on this side of Zheribets River to the southern one and to the northern one. Furthermore, after that, some Russian sources started publishing their own maps. Military experts start publishing more and more updates, and first we got this map showing some progress of the Russians in this area, and basically according to this video, according to this map, according to this picture, we see that the Russians managed to move around 2 or 3 kilometers from their main positions to the west and to split this territory in two parts. Furthermore, the Russian blogger, military expert Ryber also published his own vision, his own understanding of the situation. As you can see, his map also has been updated, and according to his piece of information, we see that the Russians attacked not just in the vicinity of Tarskoye, but the Russians also attacked on the north in the vicinity of Makeevska and Nevska, and on both those bridgeheads the Russians managed to achieve some progress and success. Furthermore, the Russians published another video how they managed to destroy and to discover and to destroy the Ukrainian convoy who was moving somewhere on the roads in Kremenaya forest as a result of Russian artillery attack. They managed to destroy a lot of Ukrainian armored vehicles somewhere in the forest of Kremenaya. Now let's discuss this operation in more details. Let's update this map and let's understand what exactly the Russians are planning to do. So first of all, let's update the map according to the geolocated piece of information we have. So basically, according to the video explosions of Ukrainian missile attack and the Russian military experts, as a result of fierce fightings and the storming operation, the Russians managed to establish control over this bridgehead in Tarskoye. So basically and currently there are fierce fightings according to information we have in Tarskoye itself. I'll remind you that on the western part of Tarskoye there is a river, Zheribets River, and currently this bridgehead is split in two parts. So this blue line is Zheribets River. As you can see, the main Ukrainian forces, if there were such forces in Tarskoye, currently are blocked and stick to this river. So basically they don't have any other option but to step back to the north, to the south, or to cross the river and to leave this bridgehead. Anyway, we expect with this configuration of the front line that in a day or in two, the Russians will complete the clearing of Tarskoye, will capture this bridgehead. Let's update the bridgehead where we are talking about. They will be able to clear this territory, and after that the Russians can start the development of this bridgehead to the north and to the south. So basically, after the clearing of Tarskoye, the Russians will start movements to the north in direction of Yampolovka and to the south in direction of Yampol. And basically, currently we see that Ukrainian army have lost the main logistic road that they were using to supply and support their forces in Kremenaya and on the line between Yampolovka, Tserny, Novosadova, Nevska, that goes from Zarechna to Tarskoye. So that was a significant result from the Russian side. Furthermore, the Russian sources published, to be more precise, Ryber published that the Russians launched offensive operation in this area as well. And as a result of that attack, the Russians managed to capture this forest line, this bridgehead as well. The Ukrainians made a series of counterattacks in this area, and they were using at least 3 tanks and 2 tanks and 3 personal armored carriers or armored vehicles. All those attacks were repelled by the Russians. The Ukrainians managed to save the tanks, but they lost every single armored vehicle that were involved in that counter-offensive operation. So basically from this configuration we see at least operational plans of the Russians. First, to cut the Ukrainian army in this area in 2 parts, and after that to solve the issues with every single part separately. The first cloud, the first area is the Kubensk forest, where the Russians currently attacks the Ukrainians, and of course the northern area from Tarskoye to Makiivka, this bridgehead that located on the Russian side of Zherebets River. Also, the Ukrainians, somehow to slow down the Russians, made a serious counter-offensive operation in Kubensk forest, but all those attacks were repelled, and currently we see the situation develops in Russian favor. But this is not the end of the story. The Minister of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of fierce fightings on this bridgehead yesterday, not today, this progress we got today. But the progress of the yesterday were that the Russians managed to destroy around 105 Ukrainian soldiers and 10 armored vehicles, including 2 tanks and 4 artillery systems. So as you can see, the level of losses is very heavy for this front line. One more time, this is not the end of the story. Also today in the morning video we discussed the battle of Karmazinovka bridgehead in this area. Somehow the Russians managed to cross Zherebets River, this one. This is the river. Let's add this river to this map as well, so for better understanding. So basically this is the river that split the territory on the Russian side and the Ukrainian side. The Russians somehow managed to cross the river. They captured the forest on the Ukrainian side of the river, let's call it like this. After that, the Ukrainians launched a counter-offensive operation to force and to push the Russians back from this bridgehead, and we got the video of that we discussed in the morning. The Ukrainians also launched a lot of tanks, a lot of armored vehicles, but most of them were destroyed from this forest, and the Ukrainians appeared in small trap. As you can see, maybe the Ukrainians thought that the Russians don't have such a big garrison in this bridgehead, and they sent the tanks, and basically they took a decision to cross the fields under the open sky, and basically those armored vehicles got into some kind of artillery trap, artillery bag, and the Russians started bombing and shelling the Ukrainians armored vehicles in this area, and the entire Ukrainian squad or platoon was destroyed, and the Ukrainians were forced to step back from this bridgehead. Later we got more updates from this bridgehead, and they are very interesting. The thing is that a few hours later we got another video confirmation, and the source was claiming that this is the video of destroyed Ukrainian tank. This video is geolocated. We can recognize this area with the forest lines in the vicinity of this tank, of the explosion of that tank. And the Ukrainian tank was destroyed here. And as you can see, this is very far from the main combat line. Later, we got another geolocated video also from the Karmazinovka bridgehead. And on this video, we see how the Russians using the some missiles managed to destroy Ukrainian armored vehicle. This video is not geolocated, but the source that provided this video claimed that this destroy of that armored vehicle also took place somewhere on this bridgehead. So basically, somehow the Russians managed to cross the river and to destroy at least few armored vehicles very close from the main combat lines. We will not color this territory into red color because for now we don't have 100% sure information that this territory was captured by the Russians, but the geolocated video at least give us some understanding or some piece of information that this territory, this white cloud, is in the gray zone, and the Ukrainians either have lost control over this territory or were forced to step back, and currently this territory is in the gray zone, and the Russians have created another point of pressure on the Ukrainian point, on the Ukrainian side of Жеребец River. Now let's zoom out, and basically we see that according to these two battles, these two offensive counter-offensive operation from the Russian side, we see let's add like global arrows. This is the first direction this is the first attack in the first vector in direction of Tarskoye. This is the second direction of the Russian attack, and this is the third direction of Russian attack. So basically we see that the Russians are using the broad frontline attacks. They're trying to use the tactics that Ukrainians were trying to use on Vremivka tactical bridgehead and on Orekhov, where the Ukrainians were completely defeated. But one more time, this is also not the end of the story. Don't forget that recently the Russians have restarted their offensive operation, a storming operation in the vicinity of Novoselovskaya. And as a result of those clashes, don't forget that the Russians managed to maintain the gray zone between Stelimakhovka and the Russian positions. They captured these forest lines. The Russians managed to push the Ukrainians from Novoselovskaya, and currently this part of this town is under Russian control, and the second part of this settlement is in the gray zone. So when talking about this area, this offensive operation, we see another tactical movement of the Ukrainians. So basically we see the direction of Russian attack, and basically according to, if we calculate the length of this operation, we can say that the tactical length of this broad frontline attack is around 65 kilometers. So the Russians currently are trying to operate with brigades, with the forces, with their armies on the front line with the length of 65 kilometers. This is a very big front line, and we see that currently, and yet the Russians were able to achieve success and they haven't been defeated. For now, we haven't received any videos from the Ukrainian side about destroyed convoys or of destroyed Russian armored vehicles. For now, we've seen just the videos of destroyed Ukrainian armored vehicles and Ukrainian tanks. But let's wait a little bit why I'm saying this, because don't forget that today the NATO summit has started in Baltic states, and there is a very high chances that this operation in Liman and Kubensk is just a part of media campaign from the Russian side, where they were trying to show that we managed to achieve the results during few days, and our result is better and bigger in comparison with the Ukrainians that they were trying to achieve, that they have been trying to achieve since the beginning of June. Furthermore, we got today a very interesting video from the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation, Shoigu. Today, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation visited a small town by the name of where is this town? Not Kazan. This is a Republic of Tatarstan. This is one of the biggest Russian productional hub where the Russians produce different types of weapon. And there was a video how the Minister of Defense were inspecting some military plants, military factories. As you can see, the number of armored vehicles that currently in production are significant. Recently, the Minister of Defense published another video of already created tanks T-90 and so on. Basically, the Minister of Defense reported that in comparison with the 2022, the Russians managed to increase the production level of all types of weapon in 2, in 3, and when talking about some types of weapon, in 17 times. Imagine yourself the level of military and industrial mobilization on the territory of Russian Federation. Furthermore, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation confirmed the Russian progress on the Kubensk and Liman front line, and he was talking about the progress of the Russians on Karamzinovka bridgehead. He reported that the Russians, as a result of that attack of operation, managed to dig deeper for 1.5 kilometers, so exactly as we discussed, and furthermore they managed to develop that bridgehead to the north and to the south for another 2 kilometers. So significant result. As we can see, this is some kind of a small operational collapse of a small part of the Ukrainian front line. We'll see whether the Russians are able to develop this offensive operation or not. Furthermore, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation gave us very interesting numbers about the battle of Zaporozhye, and he reported that that as a result of Ukrainian counteroffensive operation that was launched on the 4th of June of 2023, the Ukrainians have already lost 26,000 soldiers and around 3,000 armored vehicles, not armored vehicles, 3,000 units of different type of weapon. And furthermore, he added that more than 1,200 tanks of Ukraine was destroyed during those battles, including 17 Leopards. Also, the Russians destroyed 43 American howitzers M777, 46 probably howitzers Krabs, and a lot of like Bradley's armored vehicles as well. So as you can see, the loss of the Ukrainians were significant during the Battle of the South. Now, but before moving to the Bradley Square in Orekhov, let's go step by step, and now let's discuss Seversk bridgehead, because we got a lot of updates from this territory as well. The Ukrainians continued defense operation in the vicinity of Sporne, trying to repel the Russians' counterattacks and attacks in this area, and the most interesting updates are coming from the area in the vicinity of Razdolovka. The Ukrainians launched small offensive operation in this area these days, during this week, these days, yesterday, the day before yesterday, and as a result of that attack, they forced the Russians to step back in direction of Solidar, Yakovlevka, Krasnopopovka. So basically, the Russians left the fields between Razdolovka and Solidar, and currently this territory either under Ukrainian control or is in the gray zone, but there are no more Russians at all. So let's update this map just for better understanding. So basically, there are some sources claims that Ukrainians managed to enter this bridgehead and to get as close as possible for Solidar. Now, why I'm saying this? Because what kind of evidence we have for this? First of all, the Ukrainian sources published a very interesting video how the forces of 30th Mechanized Brigade, this is 30th Mechanized Brigade, was attacking the Russian forces that were heading from Solidar in direction of Krasnopopovka, Mykolaievka, and Sakovantseti to the Razdolovka fortifications. Basically, on this video, we can see how the Ukrainians using the missiles managed to, anti-tank missiles managed to shut down 2 armored vehicles. This video is geolocated, and this video shows how the Ukrainians shut down 1 armored vehicle in the vicinity of railroad station Sol, and the second one in the vicinity of Krasnopolovka. And the only possible area that Ukrainians could use for those attacks is this forest line. So basically, this is the only evidence we have that Ukrainians managed to develop the bridgehead and to capture the fields between the settlements. And currently, the Ukrainians have already, by also this video, that video confirms that Ukrainians not just destroyed those armored vehicles, but basically the Ukrainians have established some certain level of fire control over the road from Solidar to Razdolovka and Mykolaievka. So basically, we can say that Russian forces who are currently located on this bridgehead have been appeared in small operational encirclement, and that some roads is under some certain level of Ukrainian fire control. Basically, the Ukrainians have completed everything they need to launch their own offensive operation in direction of Yakovlevka, in direction of Solidar, and in direction of Krasnopolovka. So I expect that within the next few days the Ukrainians will start this operation, and as we discussed, according to Ribari, the Ukrainians have redeployed the forces of 92nd Mechanized Brigade to this area, and I'll remind you that 92nd Mechanized Brigade used to be located in the vicinity of the area where the Russians started their advancing on the North Liman front line in this area. So maybe this is the reason why the Russians took a decision to attack as soon as they understood that Ukrainians have removed a very experienced brigade to the south, and they have achieved a small operational window to start acting, and the Russians started acting. Very interesting video we got from Sporne bridgehead. This video shows how the Ukrainians tried to demine the roads between the settlements, between the roads of attack. Using the drone, the Ukrainians are trying to destroy the minefields, and this is the tactic that Ukrainians use for the mining process. Some sources are saying that the Russians launched a counter-offensive operation in the vicinity of Klishchevka, For now, we still haven't received any video confirmation of that piece of information, but I believe we need to discuss this just to understand the entire situation. I believe that we are going to receive the videos in a day or maybe even in a few hours. When talking about Avdiivka, the situation is the same. According to the latest update we have, the Russians managed to establish fire control over the roads between Avdiivka and the mainland, and as a result of counter-offensive operation, the Russians managed to maintain the area between Severna and positions in Vodiana and Opitna, and we see that every single day the situation in Avdiivka and Ukrainian garrison is getting worse and worse. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of fierce fightings on Donetsk front line, this is the area from Marinka to, let's say, Seversk, the Ukrainians lost around 250 soldiers and 10 armored vehicles, including one tank. Furthermore, the Russians managed to destroy another Raider INTPQ-50 on this bridgehead. And now we are getting to the South Donetsk and Zaporozhye area. When talking about Ugledar, we haven't received any updates, just the regular activity, nothing more. When talking about Vremivka tactical bridgehead, the Ukrainians these days launched significant attack in direction of Russian trenches. They were attacking the Russians from Makarovka, trying to cut the salient that was on this map. If you remember the configuration of my map, you will notice that I have updated the map, and the Ukrainians, as a result of attack, managed to cut the salient. They published a very interesting, very powerful video, to tell the truth. This is the episode of Ukrainian attack. There are at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 probably personal carriers, 2 tanks, and the support of 2 tanks were heading. This video is geolocated. We're heading, let's say, to the east, to the west, capturing the Russian trenches. You see the Russian defense line, defense belt in this area. We haven't received the end of this video, but the Ukrainians claims that they managed to capture this bridgehead. And furthermore, military expert Russian Ryber confirms that Ukrainians managed to maintain this territory and to force the Russians to step back towards the next defense belt that currently lays on the along this forest line. So there is a field between the forest lines, and there are still a lot of things to do for the Ukrainians if they want to continue further offensive operation. And if they want, of course, first of all, they need to find a key and find a solution how to penetrate the Russian forces in Priyutine and to capture this settlement. This is the K town, K settlement, and if the Ukrainians can achieve a success, then they will be able to proceed further and to start the battle for Staromlinovka. Now we are moving to the Bradley Square. Today we continue receiving more and more updates of results of Ukrainian, another failed attempt of Ukrainian forces to encircle or to, I don't know what to do with this bridgehead. We got a lot of updates. We got the morning we discussed the significant level of Ukrainian losses on this area. This is another video, as you can see, this is the most beautiful picture, I believe. That's like a big accumulation of Ukrainian forces at one place that were destroyed by Russian artillery fire. This is like, it's even difficult to describe my vision of the situation and how stupid that operation was implemented by the Ukrainians. This is a video from another angle of the destroyed Ukrainian armored vehicles, and of course the videos of battles, how the Ukrainians were trying to cross the fields. The thing that we see that basically there is just one positive side from the Ukrainian side on this area, and the thing is that the Russians, as we see, stopped using the distance mining of method, at least when talking about the northern fortifications, and we stopped receiving the videos how the Ukrainians got on minefields on the north, and just the videos of clashes right in front of Robotina. Probably the main reason of that is the Russians still think and believe that they can counterattack and to return these positions, so that's why they're not mining them, because they understand that sooner or later, as soon as the Ukrainians will lose enough of blood, the Russians will relaunch attack and they will try to recapture. So for these purposes, they don't think that it's very smart to mine the territory that they will be forced to recapture later. Also, we got videos how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainians' armored vehicles using all types of drones the Russians have. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation Federation reported that as a result of fierce fightings on the Bradley Square, Remivka tactical bridgehead and Petykhatki, the Ukrainians lost 90 soldiers and 24 armored vehicles, including 4 tanks. The level of loss of armored vehicles are very heavy, as you can see. Also, there were few updates from Petykhatki, but mainly those updates came from the Ukrainian side. We will discuss them because all of these updates are geolocated. They confirms the geolocation of the Russian forces. For example, on this video, the Ukrainian claims that they attacked and destroyed Russian ammo depot. So basically, this video confirms that this part of the front forest line, this one, is under Russian control. So basically I expect that most of the main part of this forest line and this one as well are under Russian controls. And another video came from the southeastern flank of Petykhatki. The same story. The Ukrainians claims that as a result of artillery attack, they destroyed the Russian forces, the Russian troopers and infantry. Basically, this video also confirms the Russian control over these trenches, over these fortifications. So that means that probably the bridgehead and the trenches, forest lines on the north are also under Russian control. Now we are moving to Kherson. We got probably this is the only area where the Russians didn't have any progress, and this is the area where the Ukrainians had progress. The Russians reported that as a result of fierce fightings, as a result of many attempts from their side to force the Ukrainians to step back from the islands between the banks of Dnipro River, the Russians were failed, and they got an order to step back from this territory, and currently the Russians left the islands between Kherson and Oleshki. I have updated this map, and currently this territory is under Ukrainian control. Maybe not the entire residential area in this part, because I believe the Ukrainians need some time to make some clearing operation, but in a day or two the Ukrainians will complete the clearing of the islands and they will start developing their bridgehead to the south in direction of Oleshki, and we're going to start seeing the Battle of Oleshki. It's going to be just artillery duels, but of course also some marine operation with crossing the river, of course we're going to see as well on this bridgehead. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of fierce fightings on this bridgehead, the Ukrainians lost 50 soldiers and 6 armored vehicles. Also during these days, the Ukrainians were attacking Berdyansk and the south and the settlements in Zaporozhye area using Storm Shadow missiles, and as a result of one of those attacks, the Ukrainians managed to kill the Russian general who was very important, who had a very big and very important position in Russian 58th army, which is in this army is responsible for Zaporozhye defense operation. So as you can see, this is very heavy losses among the commanders of Russian Federation, and this case is confirmed. And the last update is that the Russians today attacked Odessa port, and as we discussed, this is very important. This is some kind of a message that the Russians are not going to prolong the grain deal, and this is the first attack since the beginning of the grain deal that was signed by Russia and the Western countries, including Ukraine. And I believe that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.